I think now is better. No voice, Kim.
Our plenary session is about national nutrition guidelines given by Ms. Latifa Rashid, who is currently the head of nutrition department in the Ministry of Health of the United Arab Emirates. Ms. Latifa has a bachelor degree of Food and Nutrition Industries from the Faculty of Agricultural Sciences in the United Arab Emirates University. She has been part of some of the nutrition-related scientific conferences internationally, such as Barcelona, Czech Republic, Switzerland, as well as all over the region of the United Arab Emirates. She was invited as a speaker to various scientific trainings and seminars, which are in the field of obesity, nutrition, and child health, critical care, and National Strategy for Environment and Health.
We can start with you, Ms. Latifa.
Salam alaikum. معاكم أنا. Our lecture, it will be in Arabic because the strategy already it is in Arabic for it is a national strategy. First of thing, I like to thank Professor Aisha and for her support for anything I am doing in my work or in my life. Really, she's not as a friend, she's sister and she is guiding me in everything. اوكي، وبداية أنا أعتقد نفسي إني محظوظة اليوم إني أكون معاكم، لأن إن شاء الله بننتقل إلى مؤسسة الإمارات الصحية. فبقول لكم إن أهم إنجازات الوزارة في الحقبة اللي إحنا كنت رئيس قسم التغذية مع زملائي نادية محمد وسوزان بوعنان. إحنا أنجزنا الاستراتيجية الوطنية للتغذية، أنجزنا إن شاء الله الدليل الإرشادي الوطني، وأنجزنا جميع الأشياء فيما يتعلق بالببليك نيوتريشن، سواء تغيير المواصفات أو أشياء كبيرة في ما يخص التغذية الخاصة في الكوميونيتي. وإن شاء الله في خلال السنوات القادمة لما أكون معاكم في المؤتمر بتشوفون أشياء في الكلينيكال، سوينا أشياء كبيرة وإن شاء الله يوفق الجميع. خلينا نرجع لمحاضرتنا عشان ما أضيع عليكم الوقت. إحنا إن شاء الله بتكون I don't know it's clear كم محاضرتنا إن شاء الله تكون عند الدليل الإرشادي الوطني للتغذية. مثل ما تعرفون ممكن الدليل الإرشادي الوطني أول شيء تفكرون شو مقصود دليل الإرشادي الوطني وليش معطينا اسم كبير. كلكم تستخدمون دليل إرشادي ولكن ليس وطني، فيما يسمى بين الناس الفود بيراميد أو ماي بليت، فهذا يخص أمريكا أو يخص العادات الغذائية الخاصة في أمريكا. وكل دولة لابد أن يكون لها دليل إرشادي وطني للتغذية، وإحنا أول مرة فكرنا أن نسوي دليل إرشادي وطني لحصول الدولة على الأمن الغذائي. فأي دولة لازم تحصل على الأمن الغذائي لابد من وجود الدليل الإرشادي الوطني للتغذية، ولا بد من وجود الاستراتيجية الخاصة بالتغذية، وتم تنفيذها في خلال الفترات من 2016 لين 2021، وإن شاء الله ننتقل للأشياء الأخرى الكلينيكال، وأوعدكم مرات الجاية أشارك معاكم في أشياء جدا جميلة. الدليل الإرشادي الوطني بمساعدة جميع الشركاء اللي معانا في اللجنة الوطنية للتغذية برئاسة وزارة الصحة، ما بذكر أسماء لأنه بيضيع وقت. حبينا نسمي الدليل الإرشادي الوطني البرج الإماراتي الغذائي، يد فكرة البرج الإماراتي الغذائي مثل ما تشوفون بيراميد في بعض الدول، الأرز في دول ثانية. من أهم معلم من معالم في دولة إمارات هو برج خليفة، وهذا المعلم ممكن من خلال هذا المعلم بحجمه الكبير ممكن تنفيذ فكرة الدليل الإرشادي الوطني. فبتشوفون الألوان المختلفة هاي بنتكلم عنها كلها دليل أو دلالة على شيء معين. وأيضا أهم شيء الدليل الإرشادي الوطني اللي عندنا بتشوفون يختلف عن الأشياء الثانية أو الدول الثانية، غطى جميع الأعمار مختلفة منذ الولادة حتى سن الكبار السن، وحتى غطى في السلامة الغذائية في الدليل. وأيضا بتشوفون في الدليل الإرشادي الوطني لم يغطي فقط التغذية، أيضا غطى النشاط البدني. وأيضا أنا فخورة جدا أن يالي شكر وعلى رأسهم جامعة الإمارات، يعني شكر من جامعة الشارجة، ويعني شكر من جميع الزملاء اللي شاركوا معنا، وأيضا بالفاو ومنظمة الصحة العالمية، أنه يعتبر إنجاز كبير. خلينا ندخل في الموضوع، أنا حبيت أشوقكم بس. فأول ما سوينا أنا بقول لكم إياه مثل قصة. كان الهدف الرئيسي من الدليل الإرشادي الغذائي تحسين الوضع الغذائي لمجتمع دولة الإمارات. فدائما الوضع الغذائي يؤثر على اقتصاد الدولة، ويؤثر الوضع الغذائي على الحالة الصحية للدولة، وأيضا للمخرجات وتطوير الدولة، لأن لما تكون الوضع الغذائي منخفض يؤثر على إنتاجية الدولة. الوقاية من الإصابة بأمراض سوء التغذية والسمنة والأمراض المزمنة، خفض نسبة الإصابة بالأمراض المزمنة مثل السكري وضغط الدم وأمراض القلب ومرض مرض السرطان. وحطينا أن أهم استخدامات لهذا الدليل يكون من خلال تعميم هذا الدليل تعميم هذا الدليل كدليل إرشادي غذائي وكوسيلة تثقيفية لجميع الجهات الرسمية، وأن يكون عبر جميع مناطق التواصل الاجتماعي بجميع الوسائل الإعلامية، والتقيد به في جميع المؤسسات الصحية. للأسف أحب أخبركم دائما الناس يكونون علماء في التغذية وفي الدين، فبتشوف وايد أفكار خاطئة، ودائما يكون نتيجة عدم وجود دليل إرشادي وطني التقيد به في جميع المؤسسات الصحية كموجه غذائي صحي للمرضى، واستخدامه في عيادات التغذية كتثقيف غذائي للمرضى وتخطيط وجباتهم، والاستفادة من الدليل الإرشادي الغذائي الوطني في الجهات التعليمية، يعني في المنهج التعليمي أو حتى في الكتب. بتشوفون مثلا السعودية هم صبقونا في كتاب كراوس محطوط النخلة الغذائية، وأيضا مثلا أمريكا اللي خاص فيهم، لبنان الأرز اللي خاص فيهم. فإحنا إن شاء الله بس يعني شوية جائحة كوفيد وقفت أشياء، بتكون في جميع المناهج التعليمية سواء مدارس أو جامعات، وأيضا النوادي الرياضية والمراكز الصحية. تم إرساله بالفعل للمنظمات والجهات الصحية، سواء اللجنة الخليجية للتغذية أو العربية العالمية تم إرساله للفاو، تم إرساله WHO المنظمة الصحة العالمية. واستخدامه للعلاقة بين الغذاء والتغذية، إدراجه ضمن المنهج الدراسي مثل ما قلنا بهدف ترسيخ مفهوم الغذاء الصحي منذ النشأة، الترويج له بجميع الحملات. أي حملة تخص الصحة لابد من الترويج للدليل الإرشادي الصحي، طباعته ونشره وإطلاق مسابقات ثقافية تخصه. أوكي، قبل ما أبدأ خليني، إحنا قلنا بنقوله مثل قصة شيقة. قبل ما نسوي، إحنا شفنا على مستوى العالمي، جمعنا طبعا الفود بيراميد، الدليل الإرشادي الأمريكي الكندي من جميع الدول العالمية، وشفنا شو أوجه التشابه بينهم. وجمعنا كان يعني أكثر واحد في الخليج أقوى شيء الدليل الإرشادي النخلة اللي السعودية، الدليل الإرشادي للغذائي اللي مع المملكة العربية السعودية، وحطينا مقارنة فيهم فشفنا فيهم كل التوجهات. جمعنا هاي التوجهات والأشياء اللي قارنوا فيهم، وأيضا البورشن سايز شفنا في وايد أشياء متشابهة، ولكن كنا محظوظين أن في خلال هذه الفترة كان في هناك مسح صحي في الدولة من قبل منظمة الصحة العالمية متعاونة مع وزارة الصحة في الإمارات، فكان في بارت خاص في التغذية، فتم خلال عام 2018 مسح صحي لدولة الإمارات لجميع إمارات الدولة. تم تغطية ما يقارب 8214 وكان معنية بالأمراض الغير معدية، القياسات والمؤشرات السريرية والحيوية في جميع الإمارات 7. كان في جزء خاص فينا إحنا اللي هو في التغذية، حاولنا نتعرف من خلاله على العادات الغذائية. فكانت العادات الغذائية بالنسبة أول شيء حطينا استهلاك الدهون نتيجة ارتفاع السمنة، فشفنا لا المؤشرات طيبة أن استهلاك الدهون ممكن أنتم تلاحظون هذا الشيء لو مشيتوا في السوبر ماركت أو الجمعية، أن الناس معظمهم يستهلكون الزيوت النباتية وبنسبة أعلى من الزيوت النباتية، زيت الزيتون يليه دوار الشمس. وهذا بالفعل بتشوفونه الناس الحين ما يطبخون، يعني بدون هالاستبيان راقبوا الناس في الجمعية شو يشترون، أكثر شيء يكون الزيت النباتي. طريقة طهي الطعام يعني بدون ما أذكر أرقام كان بنسبة أعلى الشوي يليه السلق. خليه هني شوي أقرب الفكرة، لأن لو قلت في ناس قالوا كيف السلق، إحنا في الإمارات الصالونة أو المرق هذا يعتبر سلق في صلصة الطماطم، فهذا هو سلق. والقلي بكمية قليلة جدا 19%. الاستبيانات هذه لجميع أفراد مجتمع دولة إمارات سواء لوكال أو نون لوكال، سواء مواطنين أم غير مواطنين. وشفنا مصادر الدهون أيضا هي الأجبان، قلنا من خلال الطهي من خلال نوع الزهون. الأجبان أكثر شيء الناس يحبونه الأجبان البيضاء أكثر شيء استهلاكه، يليه الأجبان الكريمية، آخر شيء الصفراء. أهم مشاكل أو أهم مصادر السكر اللي يتم استهلاكها هي من المشروبات التي تحتوي على السكر، مثل المشروبات الغازية والعصائر المصنعة. وممكن لاحظتوا هالشيء بعد ما سووا هالمسح طلع تاكسيشن أو ضريبة على المشروبات الغازية والعصائر المضاف لها السكر. فهالمسوح الغذائية أو المسح الصحي ما يكون إلا بهدف إدراج قوانين بهذا. وتباينت النتائج المتعلقة بالاستهلاك الملح. معظم استهلاك الملح نتيجة إضافة الصلصات المالحة أو قبل أو أثناء تناول الطعام. أنا خليني أقرب لكم معنى. مثلا في كل بيت إماراتي بتشوفون مخللات على الطاولة، مش شرط يكون الشيكر أو المملحة، مش شرط، بس المخللات أو الصلصة الحارة بأساميها المختلفة هذيلا، أو الكاتشب هذيلا دائما، أو الصلصات الأخرى ممكن في أسماء تجارية أنا ما ذكرتها، هو أعلى مستوى. ويليه كان بعدين الشوربات الجاهزة، مكعبات المرق. الشوربات الجاهزة بعد شوي في رمضان أكيد الكل بيستهلكها، وبعدين مكعبات المرق الجاهزة. وأيضا في نسبة فئات وخصوصا فئة المراهقين كان النسبة العالية من الوجبات الجاهزة العالية في الأملاح. بالنسبة للحبوب أكيد فكرتوا في الألياف، فكان معظم الناس يحبون الخبز وحبوب الإفطار الغير المكررة، مش الغير كاملة الحبوب أو غير كاملة. وأفضل اختيار للأفراد هم كان الدجاج، يليه السمك، آخر شيء اللحوم الحمراء. أوكي، إني حق اللي بعده. يعني أكيد لو فكرتوا أنا قلت هالكلام بتقولون إذا ليش ارتفعت نسبة السمنة والأمراض المزمنة. إحنا تبينا من خلال هذه الدراسة تبين أن نسبة ارتفاع الأمراض المزمنة مش يعني بنسبة عالية جدا، أو وجودها يتسنى لعدم تناول الخضروات والفواكه. وبالفعل أنتوا الحين حزة الغداء تشيكوا على طاولة الطعام في البيت، زين إن إحنا فيرتشوال بتشوفون الخضروات، يعني بيكون غنشة العيش أو صينية العيش كبيرة جدا، والخضروات والفواكه إذا كانت موجودة الحصص قليلة جدا. واكتشفوا منظمة صحة عالمية أو هالدراسة إنه أقل من المقرر اللي هو 5 حصص في اليوم. ما ننسى أن أسباب الأمراض المزمنة والبدانة دائما بالنشاط البدني، انخفاض النشاط البدني من خلال المشاركين. إن 70% منهم لا يقوم بأي نشاط بدني كافي. فممكن إن احنا من خلال هاي لازم نركز على هاي النقطتين، سواء في الأويرنس أو حتى في أي تدخل بوليسي لازم نركز على هالاثنين. هذا ما يعني إن نهمل البقية. حطينا الدليل الإرشادي الوطني، أنا ما عارفة كيف أشيل هاي، أوكي. حطينا الدليل الإرشادي الوطني وكان عبارة عن 6 أدلة. فالدليل الإرشادي الأول الهدف منه دعم وتعزيز النظام الغذائي الحياتي الصحي من خلال الغذاء الصحي والنشاط البدني للجميع، يعني مش لفئة معينة. ممكن تشوفون في الفود بيراميد أو الماي بليت حاطين فئة معينة، إحنا حتى المسنين. فأول شيء ناخذ النقطة الأولى، الغذاء الصحي من خلال استهلاك كميات وافية من الخضروات المتنوعة والخضروات الداكنة والصفراء والحمراء والبقول كلها. ويجب واستهلاك الفواكه بأنواعها، حتى يعني استهلاك الفواكه الطازجة، حتى استهلاك الفواكه المجمدة والمجففة. أكيد الطازجة أفضل، بس أفضل من عدم استهلاكها. شرب الماء، يجب أن يكون الماء هو الراوي للعطش بحوالي 6 إلى 8 أكواب الماء خلال اليوم. Sorry Kim, I can't change. Could you please change the...
Can you
مو قادرة أبدل أوكي. استهلاك الحبوب، وتبين أن استهلاك الحبوب، إحنا مثل ما قلنا في الدراسة أن معظم الناس يستهلكون الحبوب المكررة، فكان من الدليل الإرشادي هو استهلاك الحبوب أن يكون على الأقل نصف منها من الحبوب الكاملة. استهلاك الحليب ومنتجاته من بعد عمر 2 تكون منزوعة وقليلة الدسم. تناول مصادر البروتين مثل الأطعمة البحرية 2 خلال الأسبوع. وللأسف شفنا إحنا بلد من يعني البلد المنتجين للسمك، ومعروف أن أكلنا الشعبي، ولكن الجيل الجديد معظمهم يحب الدواجن، فلا بد من نحفز على استهلاك كمية أعلى من الأسماك، وانخفاض تخفيض اللحوم ل2 في الأسبوع، أن تكون منزوعة الجلد الدواجن، بالإضافة إلى البيض والبقول. تناول بحدود منخفضة جدا الدهون المشبعة والمتحولة والسكر والملح، واستهلاك 10% من السعرات في اليوم من السكر، والأفضل خفضها ل5. هذا هني شوي بتوقف عنه، لأن في ناس في البرزنتيشن مالهم يبتدون يقولون 5%. هذا شيء مش معقول، يعني إن أستهلك 5%. الجايد لاين يقول لي 10% من توتال سعرات حرارية، ولكن الأفضل يكون 5%. استهلاك 10% من أو أقل من السعرات الحرارية من الدهون المشبعة، وأقل من 1% من دهون متحولة. الدهون متحولة أيضا هني بوقف عنها، ما أقدر أقول 0 دهون متحولة. الحليب واللحوم يوجد فيها دهون متحولة بصورة طبيعية. استهلاك، فإذا استهلكت أقل من 1 يكون ممتاز. استهلاك أقل من 2300 أو بما يعادل ملعقة شاي من الملح، وأنا حبيت أحطها بالجرامات من الصوديوم، لأن دائما المصدر الرئيسي للملح أو الصوديوم هي يكون من اللحوم المصنعة. استهلاك بكميات قليلة الأطعمة والمشروبات المحتوية على الكافيين. وأحب أقول لكم الكافيين إحنا كنا الوحيدين أول ناس حطينا في الدليل الإرشادي، ما كان موجود في الأدلة الإرشادية. استهلاك كمية وافية من الألياف، حتى الألياف إحنا بروحنا حطيناه، ما كان موجود لما قارنا دول أخرى. ممكن في السنوات هاي، لأن هذا طلع من زمان، ممكن أضافوه سووا له تحديث. يجب أن يصاحب هذا الجزء اللي إحنا حطيناه، ما كان موجود في الدول الأخرى. وأخذنا الريفرنس مالنا البيدياتريك أكاديميك أوف بيدياتريك بالنسبة للنشاط البدني، النشاط البدني ابتدينا فيه من عمر الطفولة أو من عمر الرضع. فمثلا مثل ما نقول احنا في اللغة العامية النونو الصغير اللي بعده ما عرف يمشي وبس يحبي لازم يكون مدة لعب على الأقل 30 دقيقة خلال اليوم، نخليه يتحرك لأنه مطلوب منه اكتيفيتي 30 دقيقة خلال اليوم، وتقسم يعني مو 30 دقيقة مرة واحدة، تقسم خلال طول اليوم من فترة الاستيقاظ. الأطفال في هذا العمر لا ينصح لهم بتخصيص وقت لمشاهدة التلفزيون، يعني مش طفل عمره 6 شهور أحط في يده آيباد أو أي نوع من الألعاب الإلكترونية. ويجب أن تكون ساعات النوم بعد، إحنا أول ناس حطينا ساعات النوم، لأن لو بتشوفون تراجعون في السابق ما كان في أي حد حط ساعات النوم. ساعات النوم أن تكون من 14 إلى 17 ساعة بالنسبة للأطفال حديثي منذ الولادة وحتى 3 أشهر، وبعدين من 12 ل 16 ساعة للأطفال 4 أشهر إلى 11 شهر. فأعتقد الفئة هذه حتى لو راجعتوا ماي بيراميد أو أي جهة ثانية ما بتشوفين، طبعا أكيد مع احترامي لأي جهة ثانية. بالنسبة للأطفال من سنة إلى 2 في هذه المرحلة يجب أن لا يقل النشاط البدني عن 180 دقيقة في اليوم، وألا نقيد حركتهم أكثر من ساعة واحدة، كأن يجلسوا في عربات التنزه. مثلا في ناس يطلعون يخافون على الأطفال إنه ما يتحركون، فطول وقت الطلعة بالعكس تكون فرصة إنه يمارسون النشاط مدني. لا ينصح بتخصيص وقت للشاشة أو التلفزيون أو أجهزة إلكترونية أو ألعاب الفيديو. الأطفال في عمر 2 ينبغي ألا يزيد الوقت المخصص لجلوسهم لمشاهدة الشاشات أكثر عن ساعة واحدة، وهذا السبب الرئيسي للأوبيسيتي أكثر من هو من الطعام. ساعات النوم، وللأسف الجيل الجديد ما أعرف شو فيهم، من قلب نهارهم ليل ليلهم نهار، يسهرون طول الليل. فيجب أن تكون ساعات النوم تؤثر جدا في السمنة من 11 إلى 14 ساعة، إنه يؤثر في الهرمونات الخاصة بالسمنة. الأطفال ما بين عمر 3 إلى 4 سنوات يجب على الأطفال في هذه المرحلة أن يقضوا وقتا ممتعا لا يقل عن 180 دقيقة خلال اليوم في ممارسة أنشطة بدنية مختلفة تتراوح بين المعتدلة والشديدة، ولا نقيد حركتهم أكثر من ساعة. وينبغي ألا يزيد الوقت المخصص للجلوس لمشاهدة التلفزيون أو الحاسوب أو ألعاب الفيديو في عمر من 3 إلى 4 سنوات عن ساعة واحدة في اليوم. ويفضل أن يكون النوم أو لابد أن يكون النوم من 10 ل 13 ساعة. جايين على عمركم أنتم أكيد فكرتوا وإحنا وين دورنا الحين. إحنا اللي قبله أو طلبة جامعة، إذا كان في حد حاضر من طلبة جامعة ويتراوح عمره 17 سنة يجوز الأنشطة البدنية للعمر من 5 سنوات إلى 17 سنة. الأنشطة البدنية تتغير، لابد من وجود أنشطة بدنية، لعب، مباريات، ألعاب رياضية، ترفيهية، بكافة أنواع الأنشطة الحركية والأنشطة المجتمعية. لابد من تحسين اللياقة لتحسين مستوى التنفس والجهاز العضلي والجهاز التنفسي، وأيضا المؤشرات الحيوية لأمراض القلب وعمليات الاستقلاب وصحة العظام، كثافة العظام في هالعمر. لابد من تخصيص 60 دقيقة خلال اليوم من عمر 15 إلى 17 للنشاط البدني، ومتعدل بين النشاط المرتفع إلى معتدل الشدة. ولا بد من هذه الفئة ممارسة أنشطة هوائية، جري، قفز، سباحة. على فكرة الأنشطة الهوائية مثل الركض، المشي، الجري، القفز، ركوب، هي لها تأثير كبير على جهد القلب والجهاز الوعائي، وأيضا لها تأثير هي اللي تنزل الوزن على الأقل 3 مرات في الأسبوع. الأنشطة مثل نمو العضلات. بالنسبة نخلينا حق أعمارنا احنا من 18 إلى 64 سنة، الأنشطة البدنية الترويحية أو الأنشطة مثل المشي، ركوب دراجة، أو حتى اللي يقدر يسوي يعني الشدة أعلى من ذلك، فإن هذه الأنشطة تعمل على تحسين اللياقة القلبية والتنفسية والعضلية والعظام. أهم شيء الدقيقة، للأسف إحنا فيرتشوال، ما أقدر أتناقش معاكم. ما أعتقد حد فينا يمارس 150 دقيقة أو ساعتين ونص أو حتى إلى 300 دقيقة 5 ساعات في الأسبوع. فيجب أن يكون في الأسبوع ما يقل عن 150 دقيقة، يعني ساعتين ونص، بمعدل ساعتين ونص. أنشطة معتدلة الشدة. ليش ما حطينا عالية الشدة؟ لا تنسون إن في الجايد لاين في ناس 64، فما نعرف جهد القلب كيف يكون فيهم في هالعمر، فهي تكون معتدلة الشدة 150 دقيقة في الأسبوع. والأنشطة الهوائية، ممارسة الأنشطة المقوية للعضلات على الأقل مرتين في الأسبوع، مثل التنطوي على القفز أو الحفر أو أي شيء، يعني مثل في الحوش البيت أزرع أحفر. إني حق النقطة هذه يعني أي براود إن إحنا أول ناس حطينا فيه الناس اللي تبلغ أعمارهم أعلى من 65. إحنا شفنا للأسف إن هذه الفئة دائما يكونون منسايين، فقلنا لابد إن نضيفهم، لأن إحنا فئة تهمنا هذه الفئة. ففئة كبار السن أو البالغين من الكبار اللي تصل أعمارهم من 65 فأكثر، يجب أن يكون، شوفوا النشاط البدني، ما حد يقدر يقول إنه ما أقدر أسوي نشاط بدني. الجايد لاين يقول 150 دقيقة على مدار الأسبوع، أوكي، للحصول على الفوائد الصحية. للحين إحنا في الدليل الأول. الأشخاص الذي يعانون من ضعف القدرة في الحركة، سواء إذا كانوا أصحاب الهمم أو ضعف القدرة لأي سبب من الأسباب، لابد من 3 مرات خلال الأسبوع، ولابد حتى لو كان 10 دقائق في اليوم لتحسين صحة القلب. يعني حتى أنا ما أقدر أتكلم في هذا الموضوع الحين، بس حق الكريتيكال كير حتى صاروا يحطون اللي مثل العجلات مثل السيكل إنه يمارس، شافوا إن الكتلة العضلية يزيد من النشاط، فحتى الناس في العناية المركزة يخلونهم يتحركون. فحتى لا تقولون كبير سن ما يقدر يتحرك، لابد أن يتحرك. الدليل الثاني، المحافظة على تناول الأغذية الصحية في جميع مراحل العمر المختلفة. الرضع والأطفال الصغار، أول ما نقول الرضع دائما بصورة يعني وإحنا مغمضين، الرضاعة الطبيعية. الرضاعة الطبيعية لأن في أول مرحلة السنتين من العمر تعمل على تقليل الإصابة بزيادة الوزن أو السمنة والأمراض الغير سارية مع تقدم في العمر. فأول شيء تشوفون مثل ما قلت الرضاعة الطبيعية لأول 6 شهور من حياة الطفل، مع الاستمرار في الرضاعة الطبيعية حتى عمر 2. من عمر 6 شهور، مع أن الجايد لاين الحين شوية اختلف في WHO، إن نبتدي نعطيه في نتناول الأطعمة أن تكون التغذية التكميلية مناسبة وآمنة. طبعا منع إضافة ملح أو سكر أو العسل في الأغذية التكميلية. الجدول هذا أعتقد في نسخة بتكون من المحاضرة بيرسل لكم، ما أعتقد أني بقراه، بس بصورة بريف سريعة، فتشوفون الحصص الغذائية من جميع المجموعات الغذائية بناء على الأعمار، وقسمنا الأعمار من 2 ل 3، والأوزان حطيناه بالأونصة وحتى بالجرام. يعني في الفيرست اديشن أو في النسخة الطبعة الأولى سويناه في الأونصة، وبعدين نتيجة يعني التحديث واجتماع مع عدة مشاركين معنا غيرنا، كان لهم أن الجرام أسهل في الإمارات. فبتشوفون سواء إناث أو ذكور وأعمار مختلفة، فما بنقعد نذكر. خلينا ندخل على الدليل الإرشادي الثالث، وأنا أعتبر الدليل الإرشادي الثالث من أهم الأدلة، لأن دائما القوانين تطلع خفض السعرات الحرارية عن طريق خفض السكر والدهون، وبالأخص الدهون المشبعة والمتحولة، وخفض توامل. فالدليل الثالث هو السبب الرئيسي للإصابة بالسمنة والأمراض المزمنة، ودائما يكون المصدر الأساسي من الدليل الثالث من الأطعمة المصنعة. وللأسف هو حتى أطعمة المطاعم أو أطعمة المصنعة من المصانع أو المخابز. فدائما الدليل الإرشادي الثالث هي من الأدلة الجدا مهمة، ودائما WHO أو منظمة الصحة العالمية هم اللي يركزون عليه. ناخذ أول شيء السكر. عند إضافة السكر أو المحليات ذات السعرات حرارية، لا تخربطون بين المحليات الصناعية. إضافة سكر للطعام يعني إضافة سعرات حرارية. مصدر السكر دائما يمكن في البيت نقول نشرب شاي بس ما بنضيف سكر وايد، دائما يجي من مصنع، من المشروبات أو من يعني كلينا شوكليت أو أي نوع من الحلويات أو شربنا عصير أو أي نوع من المشروبات. ترى الأيام هذه ما هي بس مشروبات غازية أو مشروبات طاقة، في وايد أسماء تجارية تكون عالية السكر حتى في الكوفي شوب العادي. التأكد من أن الطعام والشراب لا يحتوي على السكر مضاف، لابد من قراءة البطاقة الغذائية. فإحنا أول ناس دخلنا البطاقة الغذائية في الدليل، لأن الدليل بدون بطاقة غذائية لابد. أول شيء البطاقة الغذائية، السكر مش دائما يشار له باسم سكر، فممكن يكون سكر المائدة أو سكر الأسمر، مولاس، الدبس، العسل، سكر بودرة، شراب الذرة. وشراب الذرة على فكرة يعني في ناس يشترونه على أساس أنه هو أفضل من السكر، ولكن هو يعني أشد ضرراً وسوءاً، يعني مثل العسل المغذى بالسم، لأنه يرفع الدهون الثلاثية، ودائما يستخدمونه لأن سعره رخيص ويعطي كميات قليلة، يسوي تحلية بصورة عالية ولكن يؤثر بصورة كبيرة على الصحة. الجلوكوز، محلى الذرة، ديكستروز، مالتوز، فهاي الأشياء الناس العاديين ما بيعرفونهم. اختيار الأطعمة أو المشروبات الجاهزة، لابد اختيار أطعمة منخفض السكر. فنشوف هني البطاقة الغذائية بالنسبة لمحتوى السكر. فكل 100 جرام من الطعام، أنا هني الطعام أقصد شيء السوليد أو شيء الصلب، يعني مثلا بسكوت، حلاوة، أي شيء. فكل 100 جرام إذا كان بنظام 100 جرام، إذا كان 5 جرامات وانت رايح السوق اشتريه وانت ما تخاف، 5 جرامات أو أقل. إذا كان من 5 ل 22 هذا اشتريه بصورة معتدلة، لازم تتعلم تقرأ بطاقة. إذا كان 22 وأعلى هذا أعتبره قنبلة موقوتة، لا تدخل البيت، لأنه هو سبب المشاكل اللي مترتبة من تناول الطعام. في ساعات يكون الحصة الواحدة، لنفرض أنك خذيت عبوة عصير، فإذا كان العبوة الكاملة أعلى من 27 جرام، مش شرط عصير أو مشروبات غازية، أي نوع من أنواع شوكليت، خذيتي مثلا صبعين كيت كات، إذا كان أعلى من 27 جرام من السكر خلاص توقف. أنا ما أقول لا تاكل حلويات، حتى الشوكليت يوم تاكله في بورشن صغير. إذا كان على صورة مشروبات، سوري هني ذكرت عصير غلط، هاي في صورة صلبة. إذا كان على صورة مشروبات أو سائل لكل 100 جرام، إذا كان 2.5 دخله عادي في البيت. إذا كان من 2.5 ل 11 و25 جرام من السكر، هذا اشتريه باعتدال. إذا كان أعلى من 11.25 هذا لون أحمر ممنوع، حتى لو اشتريته بالغلط، يعني حب صحتك أكثر ما تحب سعر المنتج.
أيوة صح.
تخلص منه
حياتي.
خلص الوقت.
4 دقائق.
4 دقائق سوري، أنا بلف لكم بس بعطيكم اسم الهاي. الدليل الرابع، التنويع في تناول الأطعمة والمشروبات الغنية بالمغذيات وعالية الكثافة. طبعا في هني كل التفاصيل ممكن عبر الإيميل. وأيضا الماء ما نسيناه، واحتياجات المرجعية. الدليل الخامس، تبني أنماط صحية، استبدال الأطعمة الغير صحية بأطعمة صحية. والدليل السادس اللي هو السلامة الغذائية. الموضوع يطول شرحه، أتمنى ألاقيكم في مرات أخرى إن شاء الله. وأشكر جميع القائمين على هذه الفعالية اللي ننتظرها من سنة لسنة، وإن شاء الله في السنوات القادمة إذا الله عطاني عمر أعرض لكم مشروعنا اللي خاص. إحنا أول جهة سوينا شبكة يخص في الكلينيكال نيوتريشن بصورة، ممكن في أماكن أخرى بس إحنا بصورة متطورة وعالية جدا، إن النيوتريشن كير بروسيس. حتى أنا أقول لإستافي يعني اتحنوا وقعدوا بس ما بتسوون شيء بصورة إن شاء الله في السنوات القادمة أكون مشاركة فيه معكم. شكرا لكم جميعا، وبالأخص اسمحوا لي أقول لكم الأخوات البروفيسورة عائشة والبروفيسورة ليلى الشيخ، أشكرهم من عميق قلبي، والجميع اللي ساعدني، جميع أعضاء اللجنة المشاركة في اللجنة الوطنية اللي ساعدونا في نشر وإدراج الدليل الإرشادي الوطني للتغذية. شكرا لكم جميعا، مع السلامة.
شكرا أستاذة لطيفة، ما قصرتي، جزاك الله ألف خير على هالبرزنتيشن. وما شاء الله أنا أشوف بوكس الكويستشن أند أنسر مليان أسئلة. بحاول أني أنا أطرح الأسئلة اللي انعرضت ويعني ناخذ منهم كذا سؤال وبعدين نبدأ في السيشن الثانية بإذن الله. شكرا لعرض الجايد لاينز للجنة الوطنية للتغذية. شيء مهم أن أخصائيين التغذية، البيدياتريشن وكل العاملين في المجال الصحي أن يطلعون أن في بوليسي، في بروسيجر، في جايد لاينز، معايير لازم نحن نتبعها سواء كنا نخدم المجال الطبي من أي أنجل. بالنسبة للأسئلة إذا ببدأ، الأخت جالكسي A5 سائلة شو بديل الرز؟ بديل الرز هو الكينوا ولكن سعرها أغلى من الأرز. يا ريت تسلطين الضوء على بدائل الكربوهيدرات لأنها تعتمد اعتماد كلي على الأرز، ولكن يكون في بدائل مثل الكينوا وذات سعر معقول.
الأخت جالكسي صح؟ الأخت جالكسي أو السائلة هاي سؤال، أنت لا تظلمين الرز، ممكن أنك تتناولين الرز ولكن بكمية معتدلة مثل ما احنا حطينا في الجايد لاين. ممكن تتناولين المفروض الكميات اللي تتناوليها من منتجات الحبوب الغير مكررة، يعني مثلا المطلوب منك 4 اكسشينج تاخذين 2 منهم مكرر و2 غير مكرر. يعني مثلا في الغداء تاكلين نص الصحن تحطين كمية وتحطين الخبز الأسمر، ومش شرط الكينوا. يعني الكينوا أوكي هو غذاء جيد ولكن مش شرط إنه يكون الكينوا. ممكن الخبز الأسمر أو الحبوب الكاملة بسعر معقول في متناول الجميع.
أيضاً في سؤال، شكراً أستاذة لطيفة، في سؤال أيضاً يسلط الضوء على هل في جدول خاص بكمية السعرات الحرارية للأطعمة الخليجية؟ وهذا يعني نفس الأخ اللي سأل عن كمية الكافيين الموجودة في القهوة العربية.
أوكي، أعتقد هذا السؤال يعني في الوقت الحالي كنا نشتغل مع
خالد العوض
WHO الفود كومبوزيشن، واعتقد الدكتوره عايشه هم اشتغلوا فيه في جامعه الامارات، ولكن احنا بنجمعه على مستوى الخليج كله، جميع الاطعمه الخليجيه المتقاربه، وبيكون في كتاب الاناليسز حق الجي سي سي، وفي اطعمه احنا مش من الجي سي سي، يعني مثلا في اطعمه من لبنان او من مصر احنا ناكلها. فبيكون ان شاء الله خلال هذه الفتره سيتم إصدارها بهذا الخصوص إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله. في عايشة الكتبي تسأل كيف ممكن نشجع أطفالنا على عدم الجلوس لفترات طويلة، خاصة أن المدارس صارت أونلاين في الظروف الحالية لكورونا. إذا في موجود عندنا they have to sit on the PC، أيوة ممكن أن يقعدون فترات طويلة على الكمبيوتر أو على الطاولة لفترات تمتد لأكثر من ساعتين. How can we change that and make them move more؟
بجاوبك بصراحة جدا. دائما الأطفال يقلدون والدينهم، فإذا كان البيئة، دائما البيئة تؤثر على الطفل أول واحد. فإذا كان الأطفال، إذا كان الآباء هم يسوون نشاط بدني أو رياضي، هذا أول شيء قبل ما نقول المدرسة. يعني حتى لو ما كان المدارس فيرتشوال حاليا، أنت تتذكر في السابق، فأول شيء لابد من الوالدين إنه يكون لهم نشاط بدني. وبعدين يعني أعتقد حاليا الجو جدا جميل، فممكن ممارسة الأنشطة. أعتقد في كل إمارة من إمارات الدولة متوفرة حدائق بين الفرجان، متوفرة ممشى، أو في حوش البيت. حتى اللي ما عنده حوش ممكن يلعب فيه أو يتحرك أي نشاط وطني في الصالة في البيت. بس أول شيء قبل كل هذا، إذا كانوا الوالدين هم يمارسون أنشطة بدنية، الأبناء على طول بيقلدونهم نفس النظام.
العديد من الحاضرين يطلبون الجايد لاين، إذا في نسخة إنجليزية أو كيف يحصلون على النسخة الحالية.
إن شاء الله أنا لو تكرموا الجهة المنظمة لو يرسلون على إيميلات الكل، وإن شاء الله إحنا كقسم التغذية في الوزارة بنبعث لكم إياه إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله بإذن الله. شكرا جزيلا أستاذة لطيفة، ونشكر وجودك معنا، وأنتي will carry on with us in the next symposium. Thank you so much. Thank you.
شكرا لكم. شكرا.
So let's start our next symposium, which is a sponsored symposium by Nestle. The symposium title is Nutritional Status and Complementary Feeding Practices of Infant and Toddlers, Finding from the Feeding Infant and Toddler Study. So what I will be doing, for the next 1 hour and a half, I will be the moderator for this session. What will happen, we have 4 speakers at the beginning of this symposium. Each speaker will be given a 10 minutes duration to present their findings or a specific talk. Later on, we will move for a 25 minutes with another 5 panelists to discuss the findings and the talks that have been presented earlier. Let's start with Dr. Emma Jaguar. Dr. Emma Jaguar is the head of the Department of Nutrition Sciences at Nestle Research in Switzerland. Emma has a broad background in nutrition research, having worked in the US in the field of nutritional epidemiology. She also led a national survey in dietary intake of infant and young children. Actually, it's the FITS USA. She's now guiding the nutrition science innovation to apply the findings from the important dietary intake studies in order to improve diets and practical during childhood. Emma has a first-class honor degree in human biology from UK, as well as a Master of Science degree in human nutrition from the University of Sheffield in UK, and her PhD was in public health from Leicester University of the UK. Let's welcome Dr. Emma Jaguar. I'm not sure if there is a strong relationship with Jaguar, the company of the car.
It's Jacquier, it's the French pronunciation.
Okay,
but
I read
no problem. I like the other version as well. It's very nice. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure and an honor to kick off this session. And I hope that you'll find the content very interesting. So I'm going to talk and set a bit the scene about these global studies that we do to understand young children's diet and food intake across the world. And then in particular, the speakers after me will talk in more detail about diets of the children in the Middle East. So I'm just trying to move slides. Don't seem to be able to change slides.
Maybe you can do it from the arrow towards the end of the slideshow. You know, there is one arrow on your left-hand side.
Wonderful, thank you. So as a company, Nestle is very invested in children's health and nutrition, to the extent where the company has made a commitment globally to build their leadership in children's nutrition. And one of the ways that we do this is through scientific studies like the Feeding Infant and Toddler Study, or FITS, that we've been doing in several countries of the world. So what is the Feeding Infant and Toddler Study? This is a large-scale epidemiological survey where we look at diet and behaviour so that we can understand the nutrient intakes and identify gaps in children's diets. We're also able to look at their food patterns and any issues in these dietary patterns. And this provides enormous insight into the diet and also some related behaviours, which I'll touch on later on. Obviously, we have a rigorous scientific approach, which provides the credibility needed to publish in our journals. The sampling methods that we use make these results generalisable. So obviously that means that they're useful to the wider population. also for us as a food company, this gives us a strong scientific basis to move forward and to make these age-appropriate healthy products. And of course, in terms of collaboration with healthcare professionals and key opinion leaders, this helps us build these relationships for collaborations. But also we hope that this science will contribute to these wider discussions in public health. And importantly for us, it helps us to continually innovate and renovate our products so that we can make a difference to consumers' diets. So what are the different factors then that we look at in these fit studies that we do around the world? Well, as you can see in the smaller blue circle at the bottom of the chart, obviously we're very interested in the child's diet. And this means the nutrient adequacy in terms of the macro and micronutrients, but also the dietary patterns, so the types of food groups they eat, their meal patterns. We also look at the consumption location, so where are the foods being consumed, and also for the younger children then the complementary feeding patterns. And as part of that, we understand the child characteristics. And so in several of our studies, we look at activity, or in the younger children, the active play, and also the sedentary behaviours. In some studies, we look at sleep time and sleep practices and behaviours. And we also obviously collect data on the anthropometrics, height, weight, body mass index. And also we can look at things like picky eating, and so the way that the caregiver might interact with the child during particularly the complementary feeding phase and tasting first foods. And then more broadly, some of the wider variables that are obviously of interest in a public health context. So particularly when we've done studies in the US, we've looked at the participation in these food assistance programs, such as the Women, Infant and Children, the WIC program in the US, which is a rather large government program. We look at the characteristics in the home. We ask questions about daycare or school attendance. And we look at feeding style and responsive feeding, and obviously the parent and the household demographics. So this enables us to build a really rich picture about the diet, but also the other things that are happening, which can obviously affect dietary behaviours and food patterns. And of course, we take a very scientific approach, and I think that you'll see this evidenced in the talks that will follow this introduction. So we begin with understanding the existing science in the field before we even kick off the work. And this will involve extensive literature reviews in that field, in that population, to build up a picture of the available data. And you'll see in one of the later talks, for example, complementing new data collection with existing national survey data, like the data that was collected and analysed in the Lebanon. And then, of course, we'll collect new data where needed to fill gaps to ensure that when we approach the study, that we're complementing with missing data. So when we conduct these studies in terms of the research and the analysis, what exactly are we looking for? So we tend to approach this via these 4 groups here that you'll see on this chart. So one of the typical analyses that we'll perform is to look at the nutrient intakes. So we'll look in the population for the children that are falling below the estimated average requirement for vitamins and minerals, which will give us an indication of the probability of inadequacy or inadequate intakes in that age group. We'll also look at the percent that are consuming above recommended intakes for energy and nutrients of concern. Then we'll move to a little bit higher up, and we'll look at the food groups that are providing those nutrients, and then also a little bit in terms of the way that the infants are fed. So typical analyses that we'll run is we'll look at the percent that are consuming particular food groups, and we'll look at the way that that might change with age. We'll look at when complementary foods are introduced, what types of complementary foods are introduced and which amounts. We can also look at the food sources of the energy and nutrients. So where are the children obtaining the energy and nutrients from, which gives us a really nice picture of the diet.
Sorry, Dr. Emma, you have less than 2 minutes.
Less than 2 minutes, okay, I'll advance then. A typical method then for collecting dietary intake data, as you'll see in the talks that follow, is we use a 24-hour recall, which is a standardized methodology which allows the parent, in this case, or the caregiver, to provide information about the diet of the infant and the young child. And we collect data on the foods and beverage consumed and the amounts, the time, the type of eating occasion, so we can look at the meal patterns and the location. So here's some examples then of some of the data that we've collected in the past. So here you can see some nutrient intakes, the percent of Chinese children that have fallen below the estimated average requirements for certain key nutrients. So this was from a study that we did in China, and I can draw your attention to the center of the graph, where you see high proportions of children with inadequate intakes in fiber, thiamine, calcium, and vitamin D. Another way to look at or to picture the type of data that we obtain, and I think this is a beautiful chart which shows the way that the diet evolves as we move through the different age groups from 0 to 4, as we move from the largely milk-based diet in blue, and then we see more and more food groups making up the diet as the children approach the age where their diet starts to resemble that of the rest of the family. And what we tend to see in the studies around the world is that these dietary patterns start to get set at around the age of 2 and then become quite well established. So I think I'm running out of time, so I'll just move towards the end. So just one final message is, since we do these studies all over the world, we can compare between countries, which we think is fascinating and really adds a lot into the public health debate. So here you can see beverage patterns in complementary feeding, and you can see the patterns, the fact that the Chinese children were rarely consuming sugar-sweetened beverage versus the quite elevated consumption in US and Mexico at quite young ages. Here's a global picture of where we do these studies around the world and how we use them in different avenues. So I think I'll conclude there, and thank you very much for having the opportunity to do the introduction today.
Thank you, Emma. Please, as I posted just now, we will enjoy our a few seconds from the session symposium time to answer some pop-up questions. So please interact with us so that we make this symposium session as interactive as possible. So what do you think FITS stands for? I have answered this in the beginning. The MENA region suffer from which problem? Do you think a double burden of malnutrition, triple burden of malnutrition, obesity, and overweight, or broaden nutrition-related problem? Let's post the answer, Kim, please. So feeding infant and toddler study, correct, 86% get it right. And then only 44% got the right answer for the MENA region, suffer from a triple burden of malnutrition. Let's post another, or this is 2. Okay, another 2 question. FITS methodology is a global methodology, is a local methodology. What do you think? The feeding infant and toddler study defined as designed to evaluate the dietary intake and feeding practices, or designed to evaluate the dietary intake and feeding practices or for children over the age of 2 years? What do you think? Remember, for the first question, the map that was presented just now from Emma. Can you post the answer, please, Kim? Is a global methodology. You are right. 94% of you has got the answer correctly, and 66 said that the feeding infant and toddler study is the one designed to assess the dietary intake and feeding practices for children from birth to 2 years. Thank you so much. Now we will go to the next speaker, Dr. Leila Sheikh Ismail, who will highlight the FIT study. Who will highlight the FIT study in the United Arab Emirates, how we made it happen. Dr. Leila Sheikh holds a PhD in nutrition from Oxford Brookes University, as well as she is a registered nutritionist with the UK Association for Nutrition. She has more than 20 years of experience in international nutrition, and she's an associate professor now of nutrition at the University of Sharjah. Prior to her current role at Sharjah University, she led the Intergrowth 21st project at the University of Oxford since 2008, where she worked around 9 years. Before that, she also served as a nutrition scientist in the International Atomic Energy Agency, and also as a nutrition technical officer at the WHO. She assisted in the adoption of the WHO MGRS new growth standards in different countries. Let's welcome Dr. Leila Sheikh. And you have 10 minutes also, Dr. Leila.
Hi. Thank you so much, Dr. Aisha. I think now we are able to share the screen, and really it's a great opportunity to be together. Even though online, we'll be able to see some of you. Usually it's what used to be a great opportunity to really be together. As today, thank you, Emma, for the introduction at the beginning, and this will facilitate my job now. I'm going to speak about the FIT study in the United Arab Emirates and how we made it happen. FIT kits, as you know now, and you were able to answer, a survey of nutrition status of children from 0 to 4 years. This is, I'm speaking about the United Arab Emirates, on representative sample from the United Arab Emirates, with the aim of assessment of nutritional status, dietary, anthropometry, and lifestyle in infant and children 0 to 4 years in the United Arab Emirates. Then for the development of evidence-based intervention and also formulation of health-related policy to enhance availability and access to healthy diet later and for early life. FIT kits is collaboration between different institutions and some of these institutions like United Arab Emirates University, University of Sharjah, and Taskif Undertaking Services, which are responsible for all the logistics related to this study. We're responsible for the implementation and data collection in the United Arab Emirates, and now for sure publication and dissemination. This in collaboration with Nasser Research Institutes in Switzerland and also the MENA region, who developed this study and also financed the study in partnership also with the American University of Beirut, which designed the regional study. All of us will be working, as you can see today, we are all together working on the dissemination and also on the publication out of this project. We had a big team, really, and this team was led by our professor, our star, Professor Nahla Hwalla. We miss you so much. And with Dr. Nahla Hwalla, we had in Lebanon, Dr. Lara Nasruddin, Dr. Farah Naja, who we have her now luckily here in the United Arab Emirates also, Dr. Samer Karoubi, and Ms. Sarah Ibrahim. And for sure, with Dr. Nahla, many research assistants also contributed, but we have put Sarah because she was most of the time there. For the UAE team, I was a project director responsible for monitoring all the implementation. And with me, I had Dr. Maysam Muhammad, who really was a project coordinator and was working on this on daily basis for 3 years and until now still supporting us. And from the University of Sharjah, I was responsible, and also Tathif was in the 3 Emirates, Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, Dr. Habiba Ali and Professor Aisha Al-Dahiri, and Ms. Wafa Aish from Dubai Health Authority was responsible for the recruitment from Dubai. When we started the project, like any other project, we wanted to apply for ethical approval. And as you can see, we have so many ethical approvals as we have different institutions involved, Ministry of Education because of the schools and the nurseries, hospitals, the Ministry of Health, and also Dubai Health Authority for hospitals, the schools, and also primary healthcare centers. And for sure from the 3 universities, United Arab Emirates University, Sharjah, and UB. And it's important to mention that all of us, including our research assistant, we have applied and we did the training protecting human research practices online training before we started the project. We started the project with the aim of recruiting this number. As you can see, we have exceeded the number a little bit, and we have recruited from 3 Emirates, Sharjah, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. And depend on the side of the emirate, we have bigger sample from Abu Dhabi and then Dubai and then Sharjah. This is the exact distribution. As you can see here, between citizens and non-citizens, we have a ratio 2:1. So we had to recruit 2 citizens for 1 non-citizen. And we were able to recruit the required sample and a little bit more, and with the right also ratio. This is the study design. We recruited, as you can see, here's our research assistant who worked with us all over the project, and we recruited infants from hospital, primary care centers, and also nurseries. As you know, some schools, they have some nurseries attached to them, so we're able to recruit for 2 to 4 years old from nurseries also. And here you can see it's doing the measurement and then doing the questionnaire also with the mother. Inclusion criteria, like the global, also age for this, it was age less than 4 years. Absence of chronic illnesses, inborn error of metabolism, and physical malformation, anything affecting physical, activity. Born at term, we didn't recruit preterm babies because their growth and their development is different. Exclusion criteria is the opposite. We had to have all Arab, also non-Arab were excluded, and history of clinical illnesses, and also use of medications that may interfere with eating pattern and also body composition, and Arab expatriates who have been living in the United Arab Emirates for less than 3 years, because we wanted them to be there for more than 3 years so they can be representative when we need to compare. This design, as we heard from Emma, and now I repeat this, it was based on the Global FITS protocol, but was adopted for the cultural specification, consideration of the MENA and United Arab Emirates, address socio-demographic behavior characteristic, physical activity, meal pattern, and feeding practices. And this all based on literature review, and we had 2 questionnaires, one for 0 to 2 and 1 2 to 4, as you know, because the feeding of 0 to 2 is different than 2 to 4 because of the breastfeeding and solid food and complementary feeding. That questionnaire had 5 components: dietary, physical activity, child characteristic, socio-demographic, anthropometry. I'm going to speak about each one of them a little bit in detail. I start with child characteristic, which include the milestone development, which was based on the WHO MGRS study. And these like standing without support, sitting without support, crawling. Then attending daycare or nursery, if they are at home or they are at the daycare or nursery, food allergy, and consuming fortified food. For physical activity, we're very interested, and you heard from also Dr. Latifa about the screen time, hour of sleep, hour of nap, and eating while watching or viewing a tablet. The dietary intake was the bulk of the questionnaire, and it had many components. First of one, feeding questionnaire for infant when they start how long breastfeeding, the complementary feeding, introduction of solid food, then food frequency questionnaire, regular food frequency questionnaire, as you can see here, including fruit, vegetables, bread, cereals, meat, and fish. Then also multiple 24-hour recall, and we were lucky that we had like almost 50% of our subject, more than they accepted, but then they who replied really and did the second 24-hour questionnaire were around 50%. And then the use of the supplement like vitamins, minerals, and others, then meal preparation practices at home, and also eating environment with the family, without the family, outside, with the nanny, with the mother, and others. As for the socio-demographic and household characteristic, parent educational level, parent type of work and average working hour, number of adults at home, number of helper, cars, and monthly incomes. Finally, about the anthropometry, as you can see, for the children, we took the weight, length, and height, head circumference for less than 2 years, and mid-upper arm circumference. And for the mother, we took height and weight. And as you can see here from the picture, we had similar equipment across site for standardization. And also we followed the same protocol all over. The questionnaire was mainly done with the mother, and with if the mother was not available and was working, for the 24-hour recall, we have asked the babysitter who told us what the child ate. And the questionnaire was entered into the tablet using the question application. 24-hour recall were entered for Nutrition Pro for later analysis for different nutrients. I have 2 minutes only. We have faced several challenges, as any study, especially with COVID. So getting internal approval, as you can see, we had to get many ethical approval, but after that, going also to the schools, also the hospital, the nurseries, we had to get internal approval. This delayed a little bit data collection, technical difficulties during the data entry when we started with the question application, but then it was solved. Low rate response from the nursery as a parent who put the children in nursery, they are working parents, so it was difficult to catch them and sit with them for a little bit of time. Dropout, we had less than 20% was really good, but still we a challenge. And then COVID when started, that travel restriction, the closure of the nursery and the school affected our study, but luckily, as you can see, we achieved to recruit all our target. And here, as you can see, this is the timeline. We started 2018, then 2019, we collected the data, and now a stage data analysis. Professor Nahla will present some of our data, preparation of manuscript, and presentation in scientific meeting like this meeting. What next? Next, inshallah, we'll present to you the next. We did not do only 0 to 4, we did more, but with this we'll share with you another meeting, inshallah, and you will be really very interesting. And I would like to finish with acknowledging all the people who were behind this work, UAE team, AUB team, Nestle Research Institute here and in the MENA region, scientific consultant, authorities in the United Arab Emirates, institute in the UAE, and also our main soldier, the research assistant, and also our research coordinator. Without them, this work was not going to happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Leila, that you were on time, exactly on time. Thank you. I hope that's next to me. So I hope that.
I hope Dr. Aisha next to me here, telling me 2 minutes only, so I had to be on time.
You took more than your time, Doctora. Okay, we'll move to the next speaker. We have Professor Nahla Hwalla, who will highlight the nutritional status and complementary feeding practices of infant and toddlers, finding from the FITS study in the UAE. So what Dr. Leila presented was about the methodology of the FITS study in UAE, and now Professor Nahla will take us to the nutritional status and findings out of this study. Before we start with Professor Nahla, let me introduce her, and I know very well that most of you know Dr. Nahla. She's a flagship of nutrition in the region. Professor Nahla is a professor of human nutrition at the American University of Beirut. She served as the Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture and Food Sciences for 11 years. For several decades, she has nurtured the discipline of nutrition and dietetics from an unknown specialty to a highly visible and sought-after field of study. I approve this statement 100%. She has founded and also she acted as a president for the Lebanese Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. She published over 140 articles in nutrition. She was awarded several awards. I will list some of them. One include the Medallion Award for the U.S. Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics in 2019, and the Susan Bulkley Award for Excellence in Education from Purdue University. She also was appointed as a fellow of the International Union of Nutrition Sciences in 2017, and she received lately that award, Takrim Award for Excellence in Education and the Research from Lebanese National Council of Scientific Research. Let's welcome Professor Nahla to the symposium. Professora غردي عندك 10 دقائق. Unmute your mic, please.
عندها واسطة الدكتورة.
Professor Nahla, can you unmute your mic because we don't hear anything? Please.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Already missed 45 seconds of your first.
No, you start counting now. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Leila. Thank you, everybody. It was a dream come true. I am happy that we are starting today. What I am going to present is only the 0 to 2 years old children. We keep the results of the rest of the population to another time. So for the sake of time, what are we doing in this age group? What we eat, what the child eats as an infant impacts the rest of the infant's life. This first 1,000 days of feeding are very critical. The first 1,000 days starting with gestation and ending with 2 years is a very important period of the child. Why is it important? Because if the child is stunted, wasted, or underweight, or if the child is obese during that period, in later life, the child will have impaired cognitive function and impaired physical development, which means the child would probably continue to be obese or continue to be stunted and wasted. The school performance of children is impacted by the child's malnutrition situation as a child. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular diseases are all thought of having an origin in early life. So this is considered as a window of opportunity in order for governments and people and parents to interfere so that they protect the child during later life. So childhood obesity tracks into adult obesity. Exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months as recommended by WHO, it decreases the risk of later obesity. It also decreases respiratory illness, diarrhea, non-communicable diseases, and data regarding these issues has been published in the literature. It also increases the IQ and academic achievements in children if they have maintained a normal weight. Complementary feeding earlier than 4 months is one of the causes of malnutrition. And if you look at the UNICEF report on children food that they produce every year, if you notice here, and if you look at countries, and I put UAE and Lebanon because both of these countries look at the yellow rectangle, you can see that under exclusive breastfeeding under 6 months, introduction of solid food, continued breastfeeding to 23 months from these countries are not presented. Why? And many other factors, but looking at this rectangle, you will see that the data on breastfeeding, duration of breastfeeding, age of solid food introduction is not available in Lebanon and UAE, and we are now presenting to the world what is the story under infant feeding practices. The study, I am going to go quickly here because Leila covered it beautifully. Thank you, Leila. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Sharjah, 85% of the population. We did nutritional assessment, feeding practices, dietary intake, all for the purpose of developing policies and interventions. So what did we do? Leila mentioned we did early feeding practices, we did dietary assessments, anthropometric, and we took also other indicators that she has outlined for us. The sample for the 0 to 2 is 276, and they were distributed as 106 from Abu Dhabi, 104 from Dubai, and 66 from Sharjah. And as you can see here in the orange, the nationals were double the size of the expats. Why did we use expats? Because we wanted to see whether it is really impacting also the expats as a reference for the population. So what is the nutritional status of UAE children of 0 to 2? You can see here that obesity in this age group, and here I divided this age group into 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and 1 to 2 years. And if you look here, you will see that the obesity percentage increases with age, and it reaches 36.7 at the age group between 1 and 2 years. It starts, so on the average, it's about 25%. What about malnourishment? We can see here that there is stunting. On the average, it's 15%, more stunting in nationals than in expats, and also more significantly wasted children in nationals versus expats. So 25% of the sample in general were obese, and we have about wasted children, 20% of nationals versus 10% of expats are wasted, and in stunting 17.8% versus 9.4% as wasted. So what about breastfeeding practices? If we look at the slide, you can see that almost 95% of the infants in the UAE in this population they start breastfeeding. They start, but if you check with those that are 4 months of age, you will find that only around 45% are exclusively breastfeeding at this age group. And if you look at children at 6 months of age, you will find that approximately 37%. And you can see that there is no difference between nationals and expats. Continuing breastfeeding at 1 year of age is also decreased. And you can see here that it's around 34%. And if you look at the 2 years, we found 0 people breastfeeding at 2 years. Complementary feeding. This is an interesting slide, because if you look at this slide of introduction of formula milk or solid and semi-solid foods in UAE children, you can see that at an age of 2.3 months, there is an introduction of formula milk at this age. However, the introduction of complementary and solid foods is around 6, which is close to the recommendations. So what is the percent of children introduced with solid or semi-solid food by age? You can see here that 65% introduction of solid food occurs above 6 months, and about 38% of introduction of solid food between 4 to 6. So between 4 to 6, there is about 38% people introducing foods other than solid foods other than milk. So what is the usual macronutrient intake of kids?
Less than 2 minutes.
Less than 2 minutes?
Yes.
راحت. I lost the slide. Okay. Is my screen okay?
We don't see it's
you don't see the screen.
We don't see the slides, Doctora.
I'm trying to share. Now?
Perfect, but if you can...
Okay. Okay, so if you look here, this is the energy, in terms of energy, and you can see the number. The numbers are huge for those children that are consuming above requirements for energy. And this large number decreases with age, reaching about 60%, but still this is a high percentage consuming above the recommendation for energy. What about macronutrients? You can see that, I'm going to skip that, but you can see that dietary fiber is low in almost 70% of the population. Linoleic acid, alpha-linolenic acid, 62 and 64%, they consume less than the recommendations for these important macronutrients. What about micronutrients and supplements? Here I am showing that the micronutrient supplements, consuming supplements by the UAE children is high. About 60% of them consume supplements, and very few go to daycare. So key findings of this study is that energy intake is above requirements in a large number, in high percentage in different age group, 92%, 70%, and 60%, depending on the age group. In 1 to 2 years, we have 50% of the children have low intake of vitamin D. 60% of the children have, as you have seen, less than the recommendation for linolenic and linoleic acid. Both are very important for brain function. 72% do not consume dietary fiber. 32% of 6 to 12 months have low intake of zinc, and about 47% have low intake of iron. Also, notice here is that there is a difference between nationals and expats, where more nationals have deficiency in intake of iron and vitamin C. Regarding contribution of food groups, these were the things that we said we will be looking into. You can see here nicely the change from predominantly milk to more cereals and other food groups. So there is a decrease in dairy from 97 to 37, increase in grains, increase in meat from 1 to 6%, increase in fruits from 4 to 7%, and also in sugars consumption from 4 to 11%. 25%. يا بعد.
دكتورتنا الحلوة.
حبيبتي هيدي آخر واحدة. So the key findings is adherence to the food groups, and this is important. This would be like my last, the one before last. 7% only, and this I want to refer to what Dr. Latifa said. Look at the vegetables, only 7% really are consuming the required amounts of vegetables, 13% for fruits, 52% milk and dairy, half also 45% for lean, 67% are meeting requirements. So the fruits and vegetables issue is clear clearly an issue for attention. So my last slide is this. The first 1,000 days are critical. They are a window of opportunity in the childhood for intervention to prevent future diseases. Of course, we did not discuss healthy preconception and gestational weight gain, but in this study, healthy infant weight gain is important, and adherence to current infant nutrition recommendations have been looked into. All of this show promise for childhood obesity prevention. Thank you. Sorry if I am late.
No, that's fine, Doctora. You are presenting an outstanding and important data. So because of that, we allow you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctora. Now, I think I posted in the chat. We will have another set of pop-up questions. If you are ready, please, Kim. The objective of the FITS study in UAE were, if you can remember what Dr. Leila and Professor Nahla has mentioned, the data collected, the data collection in UAE happened where? In Dubai, Sharjah, and Abu Dhabi, or both? I can see in the question and answer box, there is some question related to the data collection sites. Okay, can you present the answer, please? 69 has gave the answer, the correct answer for the first question. Both. The objective for the FITS study is to assess the nutritional status of infant and also to develop evidence-based intervention. Also for the data collection happened in Dubai, Sharjah, and Abu Dhabi, so A and B. Thank you. Another set of questions, Kim. Which of the following statement is true? You can read through. FITS UAE showed that 25% of 0 to 2 years old are at risk of overweight or obesity, or 2% of infant between 0 to 2 years are at risk of overweight or obesity. What is this? I think, okay, the percentage is just different. This is recently was presented by Dr. Nahla. 25 who are at risk of overweight, or 2%. Only 24% of you answered correctly the second question, while 85% said all of the above for the right statement. Thank you so much. We will move now to our last speaker before the panel discussion session. She's Dr. Lara Nasruddin. Dr. Lara Nasruddin will highlight the nutritional status and dietary intake of infants and young children, the result from Lebanon FITS study. Dr. Lara Nasruddin is an associate professor of human nutrition at the Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences at the American University of Beirut. She also she earned her PhD in nutrition and food toxicology in from France, and she served as a chairperson of the Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences at EUB between 2014 to 2016, as well as she was a coordinator for the nutrition program for 5 years. She has more than 85 publications in international peer-reviewed journals, as well as she won in 2014 an award of Abdul Hamid Shoman Award for Arab Researchers. Let's welcome Dr. Lara Nasruddin to give her talk, which will last for another 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Dr. Aisha, can you all hear me?
Yes, Doctora, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to present our results today. So like Dr. Aisha has said, I'm gonna briefly present the study that was done in Lebanon, the Lebanese FITS. So like other countries of the Eastern Mediterranean region, Lebanon is actually witnessing the nutrition transition with its characteristic shift in diet, whereby, as you all know, the diet is losing its traditional characteristics, and the population is adopting increasingly what we call the westernized dietary pattern. And of course, this may have implication on the burden of malnutrition in our country. And the population group that may be the most vulnerable to these changes are actually children, especially during the first 2 years of life, because diversified diets and dietary adequacy are actually crucial for optimal growth and development. And also because, as Dr. Hwalla has just explained, early life nutrition is actually the foundation of lifelong health. So the objectives of our study were to characterize dietary intakes of children, Lebanese children aged 0 to 2 years. We will characterize food groups intake as well as macro and micronutrient intakes. And we wanted to determine the proportion of children not meeting or exceeding certain reference nutritional recommendations. The study is actually based on a national cross-sectional survey that was conducted in Lebanon in 2012, and it was called the Early Life Nutrition and Health in Lebanon, abbreviated as Al-Nahl study. So this study, actually, this national survey aimed at assessing the nutritional status of all under 5 children in Lebanon. We of course focused on all the governorates, the 6 Lebanese governorates, and we had a random selection of participants, basically mothers of under 5 children, and we basically studied both the diet of the mothers as well as their children that are under 5 children. The interview was done in the household setting, and the sample was actually representative of under 5 children and their mothers in Lebanon. This study focuses solely on Lebanese children. So we actually excluded those with non-Lebanese nationality. We excluded also preterm babies or children that may suffer from any chronic disease that might impact their nutritional status. The final sample size of the parent survey, of the main survey, was around 1,030, but today we're going to focus on the population aged 0 to 2 years, and this included around 473 children aged 0 to 2. We had face-to-face interviews where we had, the interview mainly with the mother, but sometime we had to invite other caregivers to the interview, come in the household setting. And dietary intake was assessed using only one 24-hour recall that was administered using the USDA multiple pass approach. Once collected, the dietary analysis was completed or performed using the NutriPro software. We've also collected anthropometric data that were actually interpreted based on the WHO growth standards. So what I'm going to present today is that we have analyzed the data collected through this national survey using the FITS protocol. So the data are analyzed using the FITS protocol for this presentation. As you may guess, one of the first maybe challenge that we may have with this age group, if we want to estimate their energy and macronutrient intake, is those children and infants that are breastfed. How do we actually estimate the amount of breast milk that was consumed by the baby? So what we have done is that we've adopted the approach of Raffle et al. That actually classifies or gives us a framework for how to calculate the volume of breast milk depending on the age group and depending on the feeding practice for that baby. I'm going to focus only on the 0 to 6 months because it will take a long time if I'm going to present everything. So assume we're working with a 0 to 6 month old infant and he is exclusively or she is exclusively breastfed. In that case, it's quite easy. We will assign a volume of 780 ml per day. If that baby was actually partially breastfed, so formula was introduced into the diet of that baby. So what we do is that we take the 780 ml per day and then we subtract from it the total amount of formula that was consumed by that baby, and that of course was communicated to us during the recall that was done with the mom. And there is a similar strategy for the other age groups. So the results, the sample in terms of gender distribution included 49% boys and 51% females, and we had تقريبا 31% aged 6 to 12 months, 22% 0 to 6 months, and 47% aged 12 months to 24 months. This is the BMI status of the children. So focusing on the total sample, you can see that the prevalence of overweight was 11%, and almost a quarter of these children, young children, were at risk of becoming overweight, يعني at risk of overweight as defined by the WHO. Interestingly, you can see how the proportion of overweight and at risk of overweight increases with age. And we had actually significant differences between the age groups, the highest proportions being found in those aged 1 to 2 years. When we looked at comparing our prevalence of, if we take overweight and obesity together and we compare our total prevalence of 14.4%, is actually higher than the global average. But Haida, I have to warn you, this global estimates are for under 5 children and not 0 to 2 per se. But we can actually use it a little bit for some comparison. So the value of 14.4% in Lebanon of overweight and obesity exceeds the global average, exceeds the one reported for developing countries, and is very similar to the values reported for Western Asia, our region, اللي هي 14.7%. When it comes to stunting, again, focusing on the total sample, 7.7% of children were stunted with no significant differences between age groups. And this value was very similar to that. No, I mean, it was considerably lower than that reported for MENA, which was 26%. Again, interestingly, we saw that when we classified the children based on their BMI status, the prevalence of stunting in those who were already overweight and obese was significantly higher than those in the normal weight category. So the child was overweight or obese, and at the same time, there was a higher risk of stunting in this category. For the energy intake, we were able to compare it, for example, to the USA FITS, and you can see that the energy intake across the age groups were very similar to those reported from the US. The macronutrient distribution for the total sample, it was 43% from fat and 47% from carbs. But again, you can see that with as the child or as the age increases, the proportion of fat in the diet decreases, whereas the proportion of carbohydrate increases as expected, of course. And there were significant differences between the age groups. Looking at the proportion of children exceeding the AMDR, and this is these AMDRs are actually available only for those aged above 1 year. So when it's 12 to 24 months, 46% of these children exceeded the AMDR for fat. Bainama for protein, we did not have anybody who had a deficient intake of protein. Again, this percentage of 46% exceeding the AMDR of fat is the highest in Lebanon compared to data coming from other countries.
1 minute left.
Yes. So for again, for specific nutrients, مثلا for linoleic acid, for alpha-linolenic acid, the proportion of children not meeting the adequate intake varied between 30 and 50%, whereas more than 90% of those aged 1 to 2 years actually had a low intake of dietary fiber. Again, we had a big proportion of children not meeting the DRIs for several micronutrients. The highest was for vitamin D, but we also had, for different age groups. We had, for example, for potassium, a very high proportion, 80% of children aged 1 to 2 years not meeting the DRI. Again, this shows how the diet gets diversified as age increases. So for the older age group, we can see that the staple food was grains, followed by mixed dishes. And the third category was actually sweets and sweetened beverages, unfortunately. A pattern that was very similar to that reported from the US. Again, the key findings from the study is that we had a very high intake of dietary fat and a high proportion of children exceeding the upper limit for fat, an alarming high proportion of children not meeting the recommendation for dietary fiber, and also an important percentage of children not meeting the micronutrients DRI. The study findings also highlight the double burden of malnutrition, whereby we had a high prevalence of overweight and obesity, and the coexistence sometimes of stunting within the same obese children. So we have the double or the triple burden of malnutrition, but our results also point towards the existence of the double burden of malnutrition within the same child sometimes. So in a nutshell, our study calls for, multi-component interventions aimed at educating the mothers and improving the dietary intake of children. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Lara, for such information. Here we are highlighting both the data coming out from the FITS study in Lebanon and UAE. We will, before moving to the panel discussion, we will have another set of pop-up questions. Please, Kim. So the last two questions here, FITS Lebanon showed that 0 to 2 years old children in Lebanon had high intake of dietary fat and low intake of dietary fiber. Or 0 to 2 years old children in Lebanon had low intake of dietary fat and high intake of dietary fiber. The second one, FITS Lebanon, showed that more than 80% of children had inadequate vitamin D and potassium intake, as well as iron, calcium, vitamin A, and vitamin C. There is a high prevalence of overweight and obesity among 0 to 2 years of children, or all the above. Please select the right question. I think I had in the chat, somebody is saying I got all the answer correct. What will I get? So I told them gift from Nestle. So this is for you, Karim. Okay, Kim. Correct. So 70% and 81% of all the audience in this symposium got the right answer for our last pop-up question. Let's move now to our panelist session, which we will spend around, let's say, 25 minutes. We are on time. As you have seen, Dr. Leila, Professor Nahla, Dr. Lara, and Dr. Emma, they have presented a wealth of data and knowledge in the infant and toddler nutrition. We are really very proud to have such data from UAE. So first of all, let me thank the 4 speakers for their excellent presentation, for their effort and dedication to this symposium. Also, as you can see, that such data is really considered as a key to establish a good level of understanding on nutrition and dietary pattern of infant and children during the crucial first 1,000 days of life, as well as up to the 12 years of age. These years are critical in forming the dietary habits that define health of children throughout the course of life. Before we start our plenary session, as I mentioned, we have 2 panelists in this session. Let me introduce them briefly before we start addressing some questions from your end and from my end. First of all, we have Ms. Latifa Rashid, who is the head of the nutrition department in the Ministry of Health of the United Arab Emirates. Latifa has a bachelor degree of food and nutrition industries from the Faculty of Agriculture Sciences in the United Arab Emirates. I'm not presenting Latifa extensively because I have introduced her in the plenary session. Also, we have Dr. Habiba Ali, who is currently, I think I mixed up, but it's okay. Ladies first, Joseph, if you don't mind. Dr. Habiba Ali, she's an associate professor and vice dean for the Health Sciences Division at the College of Medicine and Health Sciences. Dr. Habiba, she's also a registered dietitian with the College of Dietitian of Ontario from Canada. Then we have our lovely friend, Professor Joseph Haddad, who is a professor of pediatric from St. George University Hospital, and also a professor in the Faculty of Medicine in Parliament University, Beirut. He served as an advisor for several governmental positions, like for the Minister of Social Affairs, for the Minister of Environment, and for the Minister of Parliament. I don't know which you did not serve, which government you did not serve in Lebanon. Also, we have Ms. Sophia Jalal, who has been a Nestle Nutritionist Business Executive Officer and Vice President for the Middle East and North Africa since 2019. Before that role, she took the role of country business manager for the Gulf and Levant region, managing around 12 countries. And last but not least, Professor Nahla Hwalla. As I mentioned, she's a professor of human nutrition at the American University of Beirut, and she served previously for almost 11 years as the Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture and Food Sciences. Let's go now to our question. The first question will be addressed to all the panelists here with us. So in the first question, as I mentioned earlier, it's an excellent platform to discuss our outcome and data from FIT's study of United Arab Emirates. My question here to you, how to make best use of such data? Think about your role. For example, Latifa is coming from the Ministry of Health. So she will think from a governmental perspective. For Professor Nahla, Dr. Habiba, they are coming from academia. So think about how you will utilize best this data, how you can best leverage this evidence-based finding in a concrete action. For Joseph, you are a pediatrician. How you can help parents raise their children in a healthy manner. Also, Sophia, I will consider you from industry and at the same time from a community. So what will be the role of multi-component intervention to address nutrition issues and promote health in infant and children? Shall we give first the floor to the government? Here, Ms. Latifa, Rashid.
Okay, thank you, Professor Aisha. So as I mentioned in my guidelines, according to our data, we will develop any strategy. So the first thing regarding to the data we collected from any study, we have to have our nutritional strategy, and we have after to do our policies according to the situation in our country, and also policies also we have to enhance and working hand to hand with all companies, different companies without giving name, Nestle or any other, to playing with the standardization of the all product. Also we have to play also in the portion size. Also we have to not forget the population. We have to more campaigns and award and education for the public.
Thank you so much. Really, you tackled the public health, you tackled policy, recommendation, and government action. Let's move to the academia. Professor Nahla and Dr. Habiba, how best you will disseminate to all audience the information out of this study?
Mute.
Doctora.
Okay, hello. It's okay, you can hear me.
Habiba. Nice to see you.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. First of all, I like to thank, can you hear? Okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this interesting conference and very useful conference, and for also inviting me to be part of this expert panel discussion. So as Professor Asha, you alluded to, we need multiple people to be part of this discussion. We need multiple people to take action and to make it happen so that we have healthy eating options and behaviors for our small children and older children. So the action I would recommend, number one, if I have to choose only one word, is collaborate. Why collaborate? Because we need these multi-sector holders to be part of this action. Okay, if we look at the academia, our first role is, first of all, to understand the needs of the community. So we need to assess what are the issues that are common, that are prevalent, that are increasing in the community, and try to use scientific method for analyzing and understanding it. And once we explore what are the issues, then our role is to disseminate this information, share with the scientific community, and share also with the public, as well as the policymakers, the industry, and all the other stakeholders.
So you want me to say something, Aisha, or not yet?
Sorry, Doctora, my mic was mute. Would you like to add something in regard of the utilization of the data and knowledge?
First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank Ms. Latifa for her support for this project. And it was really crucial so that we got it to completion. This is important. This project provided important knowledge and evidence, that is scientific evidence for interventions. So what opportunities this project provide is, first of all, we can set priorities. We can look at the data and set priorities. And once we set priorities, a program, a strategy, like Ms. Latifa said, is important to tackle systematically, starting with the most important, with a process, with a roadmap of how to reach the community, how to reach the changes that we aspire to change. The thing I want to add really is that it is not enough to tell people eat more of this and less of that. What is more important is to have the food environment. The whole food environment is making the public and the people able to follow our recommendations. So you cannot tell them eat, for example, low-fat milk, and there is no low-fat milk. So the food environment, the food system is an approach whereby you can have the recommendations and the results of these studies implemented and maybe successful, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctora. Let's hear from Professor Joseph Haddad. What do you think? How you can help parents raise a healthier kid?
Thank you. First of all, let me congratulate the study makers. The FIT study in Lebanon and in UAE, they yielded a lot of results. May I comment one thing? I'm a bit surprised by the high level of exclusive breast meat feeding in the UAE, and on the other part, the overweight of children later on. This is a bit contradictory if we accept, if we certainly attest that breastfeeding will decrease the obesity. So this is a very important issue that you may have to address also. And in your population, I think that you have also to correlate with the later on, because it's a prospective study. I think it is the performance in the schools of those wasted, stunted, those who have too burden. So this is a very interesting study. The group is very, very highly appreciating your input. Now, for the input in the parents. The pediatrician is certainly a part of the scene, like Dr. Habiba said and Dr. Nahala said. We are a part. We are certainly an important part, but we cannot interfere without the help of the others. And this must start by certainly the government action. This is important. And then the academic will relay, and then the ground will relay. The parents would be influenced by a consortium, not by a unique person. So I would suggest a multi-part action, and certainly the industry will help. I would just emphasize also on the role of proteins early in life. The lower protein is the best, and also I'm very, very upset with the regional deficiency that we have, the hidden hunger in micronutrients. This is a very, unfortunately, very sad, because it will certainly affect performances later on. Thank you for letting me give my input.
طول بالك يا زلمة، بعدنا ما خلصنا.
إذا ما خلصتي عم بعطيكي a roadmap. I'm giving you a roadmap for that. It's a very interesting study. You need to go through and really very, very مثل ما بيقولوا professional, extremely professional.
Thank you, Professor Joseph. Now I would like to twist my question to Sophia. We mentioned that, okay, we have a wealth of data, we have new knowledge in terms of infant and toddler feeding, especially at the UAE. Here, then, Latifa has highlighted the importance of using this in terms of producing policies, recommendation, and intervention. If we will focus, let's stand on the intervention. What about the role of the multi-component intervention? Who do you think will be the best people to lead the multi-sectorial collaboration in terms of intervention to address nutrition issues and to promote the health of infant and young children?
Thank you, Dr. Aisha, for your introduction and for the question. And of course, thank you to all the speakers, panelists, and definitely the people who were behind the work, and congratulations really for what we have achieved together. Of course, I'm delighted to be here today, and I can only agree with you that these are very valuable findings, and our commitment is definitely to help the knowledge in leadership of children nutrition. Now, Nestle has developed this FIT study and made sure that we uncover the understanding in infants and toddlers dietary across the world, and we're glad that we were able to bring it to the UAE as well as Lebanon. Now, of course, the important part, and as you said, is really about how to work public, private, academia to really let's say, action it, and not only uncover the finding, which are, of course, very important to be able to take actions, but in the same way, we are always, let's say, partnering and collaborating with academia and with government. This will be really the kickstart of further discussions on how, regulations, as mentioned earlier, portion guidance, so many other things in terms of, let's say, regulatory framework for products that are targeting this scope and the infants. And from our side, what we commit to is definitely help address those gaps in the nutrition science that may be otherwise unfilled so far. Because so far we of course did it based on a lot of international guidance, but here we have even more information related to the geography. And we will use it definitely in many of our formulations, and some of our growing up milks already are undertaking some changes based on those findings. So that's from the Nestle, let's say, product development and innovation, so that we really inform continual improvement in the nutritional profiles of our products and to address the unmet needs. Now, it's also important because we know that we play also a role in dissemination of knowledge and learning. So for us, this will strengthen the Nestle Nutrition Institute that plays a big role in education, communication programs and services for the healthcare providers, parents, as well as this. And of course, all this is made to share finding with the scientific community and really inform public health and nutrition policies and guidance.
Thank you, Sophia.
It's going to be together that we will drive it for sure.
Sure. My next question will be for Latifa, Ms. Latifa and Dr. Habiba, since they are based in UAE. And the result is coming from data collected in the United Arab Emirates. In one word, please, do not take much of time. What would be the action, and not only any action, but an immediate action that is required to be implemented out of the result of the study in UAE? What do you think, Dr. Habiba and Ms. Latifa? From what you have heard, what do you think that is the action that should be taken immediately to be implemented after hearing the result from the study?
I think if I may go first, the first thing which we need to do is, first of all, make the parents, caregivers, and the public be aware of what's happening, okay? Because maybe they think the children are eating well, maybe they think they are healthy. We need to share this information, not only with the scientific community, but also with the public. And from there, then we work on this, our collaborative multi-sector approach of addressing this issue.
I think we should increase the public awareness. It's more important than policies and strategy, because monitoring the policies and strategy, it is very difficult, and legislation. So the best thing it is awareness for all public, to increase the awareness.
Thank you, Latifa. Thank you, Dr. Habiba. If we can move to Professor Nahla. Professor Nahla, you mentioned that dietary behavior change can happen, but maybe it can take some time. What do you think will make the dietary behavior change happen? Do you think that it needs services, it needs policy, it needs awareness program, it needs a multi-component intervention? What do you think?
All of the above.
Correct, yeah, Doctora.
Actually, I want to answer the previous question.
Yeah.
What would be, and this is really for Ms. Latifa, if it was in my hands, the first thing I would do is really a national committee for child obesity. Because striking in these results are the numbers of obese, overweight children. And a national strategy for adults, I think, is available, and the sugar-sweetened beverages, the sin taxes in UAE, and the policies. And really, it is the the UAE and certain other countries are advanced in this. They have introduced policies to monitor the consumption of very harmful foods, such as sugar sweetened beverages. So I think this should be inclusive in a holistic strategy to tackle obesity, whereby the food environment, the prices of foods that you don't want people to eat, the education and awareness. Of course, awareness is extremely important. All of these that you have mentioned are extremely important. So I would put obesity as one of the things that I have seen in the data as striking. And of course, the stunting. You know that the obesity in children in Lebanon and UAE is higher than the US, that claims to be the most obese population in the world. It's much higher than the US. So in that aspect, I will tackle obesity and, of course, undernutrition and stunting. Stunting is serious. And when we say obesity, it doesn't mean, like Lara said, and even we've noticed this in the UAE. So if children are stunted, it doesn't mean they are malnourished. Many of them are obese. So we found obesity and stunting in the same child. So this is important. It means that what the child is eating is enough, is more than enough, but is not good for that.
I think. Thank you.
I think I want for all of you, that we have in UAE the Committee for Obesity, and especially for pediatric, and there is many policies regarding the obesity. But from my experience, it is very difficult. The main thing and the more important thing, it is awareness, not just policies.
Thank you. I wanted to highlight the same, that we do have a national task force for obesity prevention, and this is also a direction from nationally from the leaders of the country to prevent and do intervention in the school and even before the time of school for children to prevent obesity and to reduce the prevalence of obesity at UAE in general. My question now will go to Professor Joseph. Do you think that fortification efforts today can address the gap you have explained earlier? You mentioned about the hidden hunger. What do you see as an opportunity here?
This is a fantastic opportunity. I wanted to add it. Fortification, food fortification is extremely important. And this is also an industrial pathway that industry should also include in their product. Yes, 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 fortification, availability of food fortified is cereals, muesli, everything. Oh, yes, 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 fortification is a must in the hidden hungry.
Great. I would like also to address one question to Sophia. What about the innovation in terms of feeding and also from the industry point of view to try and resolve or address some of the issue that our children is facing?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I mean, definitely, just to come back to the first point, I think awareness, I can only agree with everyone that mentioned that, because that's going to be an important part that as an industry, we are committed to accelerate in terms of actions. Now, when it comes to products and fortification, definitely this is something that we've been working on it in Nestle for the last 155 years. We have, as you know, the biggest research center in Switzerland, and our colleague Emma presented earlier. And really, they work day in, day out with thousands of researchers about putting cutting-edge science into practice through innovation, and specifically addressing the right fortifications. And that's why the FITS is a great tool for us, not only to do it with propositions that are general, but with propositions that are really customized and custom made for certain population needs. And we promise you that definitely that's something that we're going to drive further with this wealth of information that we got.
Thank you, Ms. Sophia. My last question to the panelists before I open up for the question and answer chat box. I would like to address this to three people here, Professor Nahla, Dr. Habiba, and also Ms. Latifa. I know that the team who conducted this study, they are working hard to analyze and present and publish the data that came out of this study. What do you think is needed, where we should focus, especially in terms of publication, to serve what we should focus on in terms of publication, to serve both the scientific community as well as to inform the public health actions? What do you think? What is the area of focus should be? One of you can go ahead. Yes, Dr.
I go first. It's okay. So I will say, all those issues that have been discussed and all of those issues that we found were problematic in the study, you are all related to healthy eating, okay? So the obesity, the macronutrient deficiencies or inadequate intake, let me say to be more accurate, are all related to the food intake and healthy eating. So this is, I think, what we need to focus on more, but how we deliver this information will be different. How we deliver to the community, scientific community, as well as to the public. Public will be different. And maybe it's time for us to use different channels of communication in which the mothers and the caregivers are more attuned to. Okay, so now most of mothers are, for example, in social media and other ways they're getting their education from, not so much from health professionals. So we will need to try to come up with a way of reaching the mothers and the caregivers who are involved in the feeding their children, because to promote healthier food choices, because that's what will eventually is going to address risk for obesity and risk for, let's say, chronic diseases later in life and so on and so on. So we early start and communicating using the appropriate channels of communication is what I will advise.
Thank you, Dr. Habiba. Professor Nahla or Ms. Latifa, would you like to add what will be the...
I think it is the more important thing for the stakeholder. So stakeholder, they should know that as evidence how it is looking and what is going in the country situation. So without evidence, there will not be any change from stakeholder. It is the more important thing. Also, we have to train the physician and anyone who is dealing with the pediatric and parents. They have to know the evidence, what is the situation of country, because they are the one who is taking the message and awareness for parents and children.
Thank you. Professor Nahla?
Awareness is appearing as extremely important, and I agree with that. And this awareness needs a process, needs a procedure, needs a structured collective effort to reach people in a different way. You reach children in a way, you reach parents in a different way, you reach the doctors in a very different way. So awareness by itself requires a set of people that have multiple expertise in communication, in making the science easy for the people to grasp and understand and implement. If you tell them that your child is obese, many people think obesity in children is good. They are fat, they are nice, and they are chubby. But the issue is, okay, no, it's not good. We tell the parent it's not good. You have to make the child lose weight. How? So the approach to the community is a whole system. It is taking it one step from the science to the community.
Thank you, Doctora. I know we got a lot of questions in the question and answer box. I will take a few of them because I'm running of time and I need to do the closing for this session. I received from Dr. Halima Sabah and also from Mr. Amjad. I'm not sure about the rest, but they have the same question. What about the other Emirates? Why only Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Sharjah? Because this will not represent all UAE, Ajman, Fujairah, Al Qiwain, Ras Al Khaimah. So is there any answer from you, Dr. Habiba, Professor Nahla, Dr. Leila? You have been part of this study. Why the other Emirates was not involved?
Dr. Leila may go first, I believe.
Dr. Leila? But please be short because we are
not in before, so just because I was removed from my I mean, I think Professor Nahla also can say that for sure our aim to continue, and we were planning to do that with Nestle, but then COVID came. So we hope now situation is better, school opened again, that we have planned, and I'm sure Ms. Latifa will agree with me to take the data and to take and develop some strategy out of that. We will need representation from the different Emirates, not only, I know this is the biggest Emirates, however, our aim really is to expand and continue with the rest of the Emirates.
Thank you, Dr. Leila. The question here is presented to Dr. Nahla, I assume, because she presented the data from Leila Hakimi. She's saying, why is there a difference between nationals and expats?
Let me say that we didn't study this, but we wanted to know if there is a difference. In most situations, there weren't any differences. But we have noticed when we studied the socioeconomic status that some association between the socioeconomic status of expats and of nationals, they differ. The parents differ, the education differ, the employment differ also between nationals and expats. So all of these situations, each one of them, and we hope that in future presentations, we will show how there is a difference between the expats and the nationals in terms of socioeconomic status, in terms of father's employment, grounding index, education, and financial status. So there is a difference, and this has impacted the results. In some cases, although in many cases, no, there were no difference.
Okay, thank you, Doctora. I will take one more question because I think I like this question from Fatima Al-Anouti. She said, thank you so much for this elegant session. Of course, because there is elegant ladies around. Is there any future goal for a predictive model for obesity across all age groups, as currently there are none in the Arab world? I'm not sure who can address this.
What was the question?
Is there any future goal for a predictive model for obesity across all the age group? This can
the approach, you know, Aisha, the approach to each age group is different from the other. It can't be the same. But you can
predict obesity, Doctora? Can we develop a model to predict obesity?
A model to predict that obesity will happen?
Will happen in a certain age.
We are looking at the data, and we are seeing, and the science is not strong enough because you are not following the people from the young age to the older age in order to make this association. Most of the studies, 90% of the studies, are cross-sectional. They look at the individuals at a certain point in time. The best thing is really to do prospective studies, and then you can predict that you follow. Yes. Like we have this kind of studies. We had one where you follow the children and you follow their intake, and you follow what happens to them later, and then you come up with really solid answers.
I agree, and such models will require really a huge bank of data, so that then you build up on it in a statistical way, or and you need an IT person with an IT background to develop such models. Prediction models will be great. However, it will require a baseline set of data before we develop such models.
But you know, Aisha, in the US, there is the NHANES. In Europe, there is no cohorts in the Arab world.
Yes.
We don't have cohorts. And this is really important. This is how they develop. They look at their population and see it over time. They collect the data, as you said, and then they study this data and see how the progress is happening. And they follow the people, you know, the NHANES data, they follow it. Until now, they analyze NHANES.
Because, Doctora, because they have a system in place where even if you are going for routine checkup, they collect these data and enter them in a data bank where they can update their policies, procedures, produce new guidelines, develop new intervention programs. However, here we don't have. I think WHO were recommending their countries to build their own system. However, this will require us to invest in money and to invest in building the capacity that is required for such effort.
You know, Doctora, you are best suited to start a cohort today. You are still young, active, and capable.
I do have a cohort for pregnant women. Maybe in the future I can highlight the protocol. You are part of it, Doctora. Dr. Habib, a part of it also. Before saying goodbye, I just want to wrap up. I'm really sorry for not being able to address all the questions. For those my beloved people like Carla and my colleagues Amjad and my student, I could not really take, because this session was really a wonderful session. We learned a lot. We tackled a lot of items just through this study that happened in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Sharjah. Imagine if we have a national-based study, what will happen? We will stay maybe days and days just talking and analyzing, trying to find a way to establish the multi-component intervention, to address policies, to build on the solution, and also maybe provide a new way of services and trying to change the behavior of our infant and parents. Multi-sectorial action and collaboration is really highly needed. Also, we need, as a physician and as a community, people, individual being in this community, we need to provide all the support for the parents in their journey so that they can make the journey of their children healthy. They can raise a healthier population. So dissemination of information, either by a community individual, by a health professional, by an academician, by a pediatrician, is needed, not only for the scientist community, but also for our general community, for the policymaker, taking into consideration the type of platform that we are using, the type of information that we are going to disseminate, as well as the language that we will be using. Thank you so much for your active participation with us in this symposium, which is sponsored by Nestle under the Fit Kids study, by highlighting the study outcomes in UAE and Lebanon, and highlighting the general methodology and other location of the study elsewhere in the region and internationally. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your effort. Thank you for your interaction. All the best, and see you around. All the best. Don't forget to go and visit the exhibition and poster sessions. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
To all attendees, please come back before 5:30 as we have another session sponsored by SICA coming up. Thank you. Mr. Hassan, sorry, but we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you.
Just a test. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Still, Mr. Hassan, no.
Still no sound. I cannot lip read, unfortunately. Thank you for your patience. Just a few seconds and the colleagues will be ready. Still no sounds. But my sound is low as well, they say. Still?
Attendees, just please stay tuned. Do not leave the call. We are just fixing a technicality issue from the Sika team, but don't log out on the Zoom. They will be back in shortly. Miss Steph, can we try without your earphone? So maybe the voice will be...
Say again?
Can you say...
You hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Without headphones?
Yes, done.
Okay. Thank you for your patience. Hello, everybody. Ahlan wa sahlan. This is Hassan Abdullah. I'm the General Manager of Middle East region at Sika Company. We're glad to be with you today at Sika workshop titled Professional Measurement of Body Composition. Once the session is over, we're going to have 10 winners to get Sika wellness packages at one of the luxurious wellness centers. So please make sure to register yourself at the link shared in the chat box. Also, in order to be updated about all of Sika initiatives, please go ahead to LinkedIn page and follow Sika profile. The link will be shared in the chat box as well. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Stephanie Kramer. Ms. Stephanie is the Global Product Manager of Medical Body Composition Analyzer. Her experience in bioelectrical impedance is so wide. So, Ms. Stephanie, stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Hassan. So I'm trying to speak quite loud and clear so that everybody can hear me well. I hope that sound is okay now. Okay, so yeah, I'm logged in from freezing cold Hamburg, but it still feels like a privilege to talk to you today about the professional body measurement of body composition. So as a global product manager, I'm day and night occupied with thoughts about how can we improve the solutions for our customers. So very closely working together with my colleagues, getting feedback from all over the world. And we are asking most of the people the same question again and again, which is how or what is most important when you want to measure body composition in a professional setting? What is most important to you in your daily life? And what are the aspects? And most of the customers are asking similar, answering that question in a similar way, but of course we have different application fields with different challenges. Our main focuses are on diabetology, nutritional support, preventive medicine, weight management, geriatrics, and sports medicine. So these are our focus topics. Of course, Sika is present in a lot of different medical application fields as well, but looking at body composition, these are the fields and the experts we are talking to constantly. And there's 4 pillars or 4 puzzle pieces that we got out of these questions we are asking continuously. And these are, okay, the main needs for a medical application of a body composition measurement device, or let's say for a bioimpedance measurement device to measure muscle mass and fat mass, is first of all the measurement accuracy. Second, the effective analysis. Third, the integration and working routines. And fourth, the up-to-date analysis possibilities. So let's look at this one by one in detail. The measurement accuracy. So people say, or our customers say, I want to be able to rely on the accuracy of the measurement results, because of course, if you do a nutritional intervention, what do you want to see? The muscle mass should change because of your intervention and not because of measurement flaws or maybe a different validation, etc. So what we found out in the last years being in research on this bioimpedance technology is that no device is simply the same. So what is really important if you look inside a development of such a device is the calculation formulas, because the device most of the time they measure resistance at reactance, and they use these values to implement that into formulas and find out more about the muscle mass, fat mass, etc. of a patient. So if we look at these devices, not all of them are validated the same. So looking at the reference methods they are using to determine, for example, muscle mass. Here you can see from left to right, different possibilities to look at muscles with different imaging technology. So looking at one muscle, that's also possible with an ultrasound device, but from that you cannot tell about the whole body muscle mass, or at least that's quite a lot of effort. A CT imaging scan can of course determine muscle mass in one slice, for example, so you have a 2D picture of a muscle. A DEXA scan is mainly dedicated to lean soft tissue, but from this measurement, of course, you can also measure muscle mass or calculate muscle mass. But most of the studies we read about that is that DEXA overestimates muscles, for example, and that MRI is the more superior measuring method for determination of muscle mass. But all of us know, of course, a whole body MRI is really a lot of effort and a lot of costs, and just to detect muscles in a person's body for nutritional intervention, that's not a practical way to do. So, but if your bioimpedance device is validated with that method, then you get the most accurate results out of it. So looking at the second pillar, or the second puzzle piece, effective analysis. So I want to diagnose quickly and involve the patient. That's what a lot of users say. And this I totally understand, because too much information can also confuse a patient. So we want to have clear and easy to understand messages needed in everyday life of nutritionists. So if you look at this parameter, for example, muscle mass, low muscle, high muscle, and you also have some information about the reference data this parameter is addressing. Plus segmental muscle mass, for example, you see, okay, where are disbalances? What about the torso? What about the legs, left and right? So different questions you can answer with this, but clear and easy to understand. So how to support therapy and consultation in the best way? Of course, increase patient motivation, and probably that's also your everyday business with easy to understand information. You want an easy consultation and a patient education. So for example, different methods. Maybe you want a printout, or you want to show it on an iPad or computer. No limits there. And individual templates, so individual customized information sheets for the patients are important as well, because most of you have different applications area in all kinds of medical fields. And so not all the time you want to see the ASMI, not all the time you want to look at the visceral fat, but most of the time you want to really into detail and on point look at the information you want to transfer to the patient. And therefore that's important as well to make the body composition measurement a great tool. And of course, documenting the therapy progress is always of high value. Another need is the integration and working routines. So everybody, of course, wants to have efficient and flexible solutions in medical technology. In addition, everyone, of course, should be able to carry out the measurement easily. So we don't want to have, need to really train the users that much. We want a good ease of use of the device. Oops. And of course, standardization in BIA measurement is key. So from our experience, it's really, really helpful if you keep in mind these points. Always measure at the same time of the day. Make sure that weight and height is measured under the same circumstances. For example, don't take a big meal before the BIA measurement. So alcohol or big amounts of drinks, also water, are not really good for reproducibility of the measurement. An empty bladder would be better. And the BIA measurement should not be carried out after high intensity sports programs. So for example, we measured colleagues after a marathon the next day, and we could see influences on the face angle. So you need to wait until the muscles rest a day. The menstrual cycle of the woman are important, and medication and diseases, of course, have an impact on the water retention in a person's body. And therefore you need to take that into account when interpreting the results. And of course, it's good if the product itself makes sure that the reproducibility is ensured. So for example, fixed grip positions to ensure that we have the same measurement position every time are of quite high value. We said, okay, everybody should be able to operate the devices and the software. That's why we always want to make sure the user interface is intuitive. And of course, in hospital and clinical settings, operation with gloves is also important. Looking at the last point, the software should be up to date, or at least the interpretation results should be up to date, and the reference data a technology is referring to. So if I purchase a device, most of the people say, or our customers, I don't want to think about a new device, buying a new device again in 3 years. So that's why we chose, for example, to use a cloud-based software where we can update constantly. And for example, in the last year, we had around about 6 updates, and talking to experts in body composition and nutrition constantly and implementing new results. For example, for higher BMIs, we are working on body composition for children, things like that. So the software should be always up to date due to scientific findings. What leads me to my summary, what really makes a device unique from our point of view is that you have an accurate validation against the whole body MRI. For example, for muscle mass. Comprehensive normal ranges help you to level your results and see, okay, is the muscle mass good or bad? Or if I have an example for a face angle, 6 degrees, is that high or low for this kind of person? What is the reference group? That's why for each and every parameter, we have a reference in the background to easily interpret the results. And we always working on our own studies or working together with study centers, validating for different groups of people. For example, we found out for BMI higher than 30, there's an overestimation of muscle mass and underestimation of fat mass, and that's why we corrected our formulas and normal ranges. Yeah, and all of this is transparently available in peer-reviewed journals and online, of course. So just to have a short summary, and I'm pretty sure that the colleagues will have some examples for devices that meet all these requirements. But the main question, or what I would like you to think about, would your patients profit from a more motivational way of looking at their body composition? And how could you set yourself apart from others with a professional and engaging approach? So handing over back to my colleagues at this point. And thanks for your attention. Really much appreciated.
So thanks, Stephanie. What a great presentation. So now it's the time for the wellness packages. So the idea behind these wellness packages is that we thought that we need to do something to pay back to all nutritionists who are working during the pandemic. So we thought about an award that can be a good payback. So we will have 10 winners to get vouchers from one of the wellness centers, luxurious wellness centers. Depends on the country where you're from. We will send you an email about the voucher once you win. So now we will have a digital raffle, and all the names will be in this digital raffle, and winners will be announced. So Michael, hit the music. Here we go. So, Michael, done? Yeah. So names are okay. So digital raffle was so fast, so everything was done digitally. So we have names here. We have Miss Mariam Ghafir. The first winner is Miss Mariam Ghafir. Second winner is Miss Leila Hakami. Miss Nadine Muhammad Gaman, Miss Muna Bagmakos, if I'm saying the name right, Mr. Sami Joma, excuse how I'm pronouncing the names, Mr. Khalid Amir, Sharfa Khalil, Mr. Abdullah Al-Qahtani, Miss Asma Al-Ghawi, Miss Mariam Al-Amadi. It seems that we have mostly ladies, so this is what's happening now. Ladies taking everything all the time. So these are all the names, Michael? Yeah. right. So all these names will receive the voucher from the Luxurious Wellness Center based on your country. So we'll select the best wellness center in your country, and you will receive voucher from, as a gift from Sika in order to enjoy your time, at the same time to relax, because you deserve it. Thank you for being with us in this session. We hope that it was beneficial. And as Sika, we're always here to support from Dubai office and from Germany. Thank you so much. Stay safe.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all attendees for joining today. Please stay tuned. At 6:30, we will start our next session. So please log in on the same link, on the same process that you were able to log in today. And we hope you will not miss our next 2 more sessions for today. Thank you attendees once again, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.